Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to The Remembering. Today I have our good friends James and Rob with us in the studio. How you going, guys?
Hey, how you going, Mario? Hi, how are you?
Today, we thought we would, having a chat previous in the week, have a chat about the situation that's bugging a lot of people and got to do with all the things as police officers and fines and infringements and just the whole scenario of corporate takeover. So we were going to discuss little things with that and different remedies that are coming out and how to stand in your power, and even just have a conversation with an officer if you have the time, just to educate him in the most positive manner. But what we were going to start off as a document I've been trying to find that I will find shortly. But Rob, what was we were chatting about just prior?
Yeah, well, we're just having a short conversation, and I think it's something that a lot of people really want a clarification on it. It's not really, I can't really clarify the information, but all I can say is every time you interact with a policeman, or any time you interact with any sort of court or judge or lawyer or any sort, we have to know, and this is one thing you do have to know, is that anything they say to you or anything they quote to you is always a presumption or an interpretation of the law that they've been given. None of it is actual fact, and none of it can be proven as fact. As I say, the case of a couple of friends of mine that everyone is sure is well aware of now, we all got together and tried to work out how we were going to interact with these people in court. And when you challenge the presumptions they have about you, because don't forget that you in the court is a creation of the system. It's not you. And by you rejecting the fact and saying, oh, that's not me, well, then there's a challenge on that. So you could never say that's not you. Never ever say, oh, well, that's a creation of you, because you're always going to get challenged.
You as plural.
Yeah, you as plural. You know, so what you say is always say that you're the man there in relation to this case, because they cannot deal with real people. You know, it's very simple. It's all about contracts. Contracts in any way. So, yeah, I think Emilio's found his document now, yeah.
I'll read a little bit from this document. I'll see if I can somehow post a link or something in there with the chat, because it's a really good read. It's good just first-hand knowledge to know, because once it resonates with you, then it's sort of there forever. Okay, it's called the Office of Person, the official state office known as person, which is person is Black Law's dictionary in the law of courts, a legal corporation, organisation, and
legal fiction.
Yeah, legal fiction. Okay, this is the single most important lesson that you must learn. If you spend an hour to learn this material, you will be rewarded for the rest of your life, which is totally accurate. It's helping with a lot of things, especially police officers. Okay, the word person in legal terminology is perceived as a general word which normally includes in its scope a variety of entities other than human beings. And in the dictionary it also states that human beings is the general understanding from like what we're taught at school and the school system. One of the very first of your state statutes will have a selection listed entitled Definitions. Carefully study this section of the statutes and you'll find portion that reads similar to this excerpt. In construing these statutes and each and every word, phrase or part hereof where the context will permit, the singular includes the plural and vice versa. 2. Gender-specific language includes the other gender and neuter. And 3. The word person includes individuals, children, firms, associations, joint adventures, should be joint ventures, I think, partnerships, estates, trusts, business, trusts, syndicates, fiduciaries, corporations, and all other groups or combinations. And they come under the subheading of person, okay? So note, however, the definition statutes does not list man or woman. Therefore, they are excluded from all the statutes.
And can I just jump in?
Yeah, jump in.
That's the most important phrase of all of that. It says, note how the definition statute does not list man or woman. So what I would say, whenever you go into court, just bear that in mind. Because if you state that you are a man or woman, then all of the laws that they put down in for you, you're not privy to. They don't apply to you.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at corporatism here, and we're not corporate.
Well, Johnny just in the chat asked, does that work when the cops pull you over?
Absolutely.
And ask you to repeat your name after showing your driver's license? Or in my personal experience, depending on the scenario, like whether you're in a vehicle that's registered in your name or if you're in some other vehicle, but normally I've come across is as soon as you say that they ask you, do you have a license? Normally I always say no, I don't have a license on me. When they ask me my name, this works as well. If you have a middle name, normally I would say Emilio Ricardo is my first and middle name, but my last name isn't actually my name, it's the family's name. So in law, it's actually a truthful statement that you're making. So that last name, you're not tying yourself to that family name, so you're still sort of playing in the game, you're doing what they say, and it makes your life a little bit easier, but they can't. In Australia here, they find it difficult to pull you up on the system. But what I have done before, and this is what I try to do as much of, once you lose all the fear, and if you do have the time when you're being pulled over, is when they ask you, are you like, do you have your license, and then they ask your name, you're like, well, by law I understand my rights and I don't actually have to tell you my name, but I'm more than happy to, because when I have the time, I'm more than happy to go to the police station and have a chat with them, and I explain to them that as soon as I say that I'm Emilio Testa, I'm straight away tying myself to that corporate entity, so I'm liable for all and anything or any offences that they've proclaimed that I've been indicted with or whatever. So as soon as you admit to that name, that's when they can cut you out for whichever they think. And it's also very important to point out that it's terms and phrases that they use out of context. Because if you stated there, sorry, I don't know his name is Jono. You stated in your question that driver's license. Well, actually, you're not a driver, because a driver gets paid to. If you look in the dictionary, a driver gets paid for services like a bus driver or a taxi driver. Well, when you say you're a driver of a car, you're actually not, because you're not getting paid to do that. You're paying to do it, right? So you can't be a driver. You're the operator of a car, or you're travelling in a motor vehicle. Say that, because if you then, it's like the straw man. If you say that then you are a driver, and they need the license of that driver of the car, which isn't you. Yeah. And even though you weren't privy to this information before, it doesn't matter. That is not you. And by you accepting it, it's the contract they're offering you. It's to say, do you accept the person I'm telling you are? Yeah. And once you do accept that, then as Emilio said, you're privy to all their laws and all their statutes and all their acts that govern what you do within that car. Well, you could even say you domicile within your vehicle, because at the end of the day, that's exactly what you do. Yeah. You know, you inhabit that space whilst you're travelling along the road. So it's all the terms and phrases that people use that they actually use out of context. Yeah, but you got to put it into your terms, don't you? And you're doing everything that they ask you. Jono, best advice is learn it before you start sort of having a crack and seeing how this all. Go and do some research. Yeah. Like I've read a lot of different things, and I'm still learning, like we all are. But the most important thing, so you're not getting in trouble for saying the wrong thing. Like I remember one of the mistakes I made was when I got pulled over my name, but then even though nothing bad came about it, but I still shouldn't have said that was my car. Because by me saying that's my car, then I'm tying myself to that registration that's tied to that person. And another little trick that I've learnt is from a friend of mine is with your vehicle registration, if you do have a company, or if you don't have a company, what we've done is created a company and created gotten a postal address from like your PO box, so that company's postal address is a PO box, and registered the vehicles and the cars under the company. So then when they do try to send you any fines and that sort of thing, they're not actually chasing a legal fiction person, they're chasing the company, which has a PO box that is not connected to your house at all. So that's just one little thing you can do to avoid any of the dramas of them hassling the person, which they say is you. But I'll go a little bit more. I'll read a little bit more of that document. But feel free to just fire any questions away. Where was I?
Just below that.
Under. Okay. Under the rule of construction, expresso unus est exclusio alterius, and that's probably not even how you say it, where a statute or constitution enumerates the things on which it is to operate or forbid certain things, it is ordinarily to be construed as excluding from its operation all those not expressly mentioned. Generally, words in a statute should be given their plain and ordinary meaning, which is not there. There's a lot of
they wrap it up into all this legal jargon that doesn't actually mean anything.
Another thing is when you get pulled over, one thing I make sure I say is when they ask you, do you understand or do not?
You must say, do not understand.
I do not understand anything that they're saying, and as many times as they ask, I always do not understand. You've got to be careful because sometimes you might slip. They might slip and say, I understand that, but you're like, no, you've got to make sure. Because as soon as you say you understand, in legal terms, when you're in a court of law, when you understand, you're actually understanding their authority, in the physical sense. You're standing under them, giving away your authority and your rights.
This is why a judge always asks you, do you understand the charges against you?
Yeah.
And if you say, well, I understand the charges, but I don't understand why I'm here, that doesn't matter. You're still accepting that you understand their charges.
Yeah.
You mustn't say that at all, ever.
Okay. When a statute does not specifically define words, such words should be construed in their common or ordinary sense to the effect that the rules used in construing statutes are also applicable in the construction of the Constitution. It is a fundamental rule of statutory construction that words of common usage, when used in a statute, should be construed in their plain and ordinary sense. You should carefully read the statute laws enacted by your state legislator. You will also notice that they are all written with phrases similar to these 5 examples. A person commits the offence to failure to carry a license if the person ... A person commits offence, failure to register a vehicle, if a person blah blah blah. If a person commits offence of driving, person. But as I'm reading, just things will stick with you as they seem to make sense. But I'll try and get that document out so everyone can have a copy. Notice that only persons can commit these state legislature-created crimes. A crime is, by definition, an offence committed against the state. If you commit an offence against a human, it's called a tort. Examples of torts would be any personal injury, slander, or defamation of character.
So can I just jump in here for a minute? I want to say that when you're in court, if you ever get taken to court for a traffic infringement or whatever, the best questions you can ask.
Try and avoid that.
Right, they try and avoid that. If you do choose to go to court because you think you've got a chance that you can get this message across, always ask who's being compensated, who's the injured party, and who's taking liability. Because you're asking who, not what. Because if you say, they have to say there's no person, there's no being that is called the state. Not one person is called the state. So what you're asking them is, who's taking liability for this? They won't take liability. They put the liability onto you. And they'll say, well, the injured party is the state. Well, how can the injured party be a state when it's a who? It's a what, not a who. So you have to be clever in your words you use in court, because they can easily twist your words if you don't actually make clear what you mean.
Yeah.
So that's quite important as well.
Okay, where was I?
There's only one way.
No. Okay, there's only one way. You must ask the state for permission to volunteer to become a state person. You must volunteer because, this is going into US Constitution forbids that the state from compelling you into slavery. This is found in the 13th and 14th Amendments. When these certain things relate to United States constitutions, and a lot of it does ring very parallel with Australian, but it's the whole idea of understanding the person without this all legal jargon talking about the amendments.
As I say, it wouldn't matter what constitution it is, it all just works the same in every constitution or every law book. It's all the same.
I'm trying to, instead of...
read the whole thing.
I won't go right through it, but there's a couple of pieces. If you want to continue, there's a couple of pieces here. I'll see if I can find that.
No, I think we just got to the point where we were talking about how you conduct yourself in courts. It's very important. I mean, courts, as I said to you before, courts always work with presumptions and interpretations of the law. And I mean, if you look in any law book, there is no interpretation or presumption of what the law actually states in black and white.
Yeah.
I mean, you can read a law out in court, but it's up to the judges to determine what that law actually means. And if you start arguing the law and your rights and all that in court, you're going to lose, because in effect you do not have any rights in that court, because it's its own jurisdiction. And I think a lot of people know that courts work under maritime admiralty law, which means that, until you contest or until you challenge the statements that the judge makes or the court makes, then that statement, that presumption or that interpretation of you or the law stands. So if you don't then challenge the statements they make towards you, then you've got no claim. You have to reclaim yourself, you have to reclaim that vessel. Because that's what you are. That's what this whole court building is a vessel. It's like an ocean liner, Yeah. And there's one person did say to me before, if you threw a piece of paper on the floor in a court and stood on it, then you wouldn't be in the courtroom. You'd be actually on a vessel, floating in the sea of space. And until you salvage your straw man in court, then you are privy to everything that court has now given you and said to you, and what you are now privy to.
Yeah.
So it's all about salvaging. It's like you hear of people going out to salvage sort of gems and ships on the bottom of the ocean. But this is what it's all about. It's you salvaging the right to be you, basically.
Yeah.
And taking the presumption away from the court, and that's really what it's all about.
With what I was going to say, an experience that I had, then my friend James here will come about later on. Really, it was actually a really good point when I didn't have to be anywhere, but when I did get pulled over, and I was explaining to the police officers that I wasn't going to tie myself to that fictional character that come up on their registry when they search my number plate, because one of my vehicles has my name tied to the registration, so it comes up, my face comes up, that sort of thing. But what I explained to them, that I'm not tying myself to that name because then I'm liable for everything. And I was explaining to them over and over again. They sort of got it wrapped around, but when they called the sergeant, ended up calling the sergeant because they didn't know how to deal with me. And then anyway, the sergeant asked what's going on. So by this stage, there's 4 police officers and myself. And within a minute, and I told the officers, the first 2, that I was more than happy to go to the station. I've been there before, been through all this process, to just explain to them what's going on and for their yada yada yada. But within a minute of me explaining to the sergeant, he threw me against the car and just put handcuffs on me. Like, it was really violent how he did it. And I was peaceful and happy and wasn't trying to cause any conflict. I was calm and everything. And as soon as he did that, I told them all, I'm holding you all personally liable for any damages that you incur on the estate. And a few other things. I have to test my memory now. But yeah, after that, so I was in the police vehicle, getting taken to the station, and when I was at the station, they held me for about maybe an hour. I think by law in Australia, I think they can hold you for maximum of 2 hours. But I think what I'm trying to find is that they can, without probable cause, that they even can take you in the first place. But if you don't give them your name, then they can take you. So doing your first name and your middle name, but not giving your last name, because your last name is your family's name, not actually your name, as long as there's no registration tied to your name. So then your name comes up, and then you're not telling them your first and middle name, but then they can see your last name, then you're going to dig yourself a hole. Yeah. But when I was in the interviewing room, I couldn't figure out why I was so happy and that I was more than willing to be there, because I was just, I was like sort of thankful for the experience, and it was a good learning curve and taught me quite a lot actually. But what they were saying was they said I could go, as soon as I just told them who I was, then I was free to go as soon as I told them who I was. But the funny thing was that they when they pulled me over, they searched my name with the registration. My name come up, my face come up. They could see my face with that name, and they could presumption. And then same thing when I was in the interviewing room, when they had the door open, I could hear them doing the check on the computer, and it was all connected to speakers or whatever, and I could hear my name and my address and everything come up. So it's kind of funny that they kept asking me for my name, but they already knew, and they could see my face. Like,
that's the offer of the contract, isn't
it?
That's contract offer.
That's what I was saying. Okay, it's crazy. You're presuming that you know who I am, so why do you need me to tell you? Okay, and then I was explaining to them that by me stating that I was that person they were talking about previously,
then they can deal with it.
Yeah, then they have, like, whether they're aware of it or not, and most of them aren't, because they only can understand that it can deal with me is because when it goes to court, because of contracting myself with them, or just stating that I'm that person, that legal fiction. So anyway, I wouldn't admit to that name, and they had no other choice but to sort of let me go, because I was just sitting there happy as Larry, smiling away, just talking to the officers about different things. And at the end of it, I asked for the sergeant. I want to speak to the sergeant for the physical abuse that he put me through previous to when they were pulling me over, and he would not. The sergeant refused. He would not come and talk to me in the interviewing room. I just wanted to have a chat with him, let him know he was liable for everything. So anyway, he wouldn't come in, but I asked for all the names and all the badge numbers. And that's what I requested before I left. I told him I wasn't going to leave until I got that. And that's another thing I've sort of found, that as soon as you ask them for their badge name, you ask them for the name and their badge number and whichever station that they're stationed at, then you sort of, you be as polite as you can about it, but you're sort of stepping on their toes, and then they're like, well, this guy's got my details. If I slip up and do anything sort of unlawful, then, and if you sort of express yourself as an individual who understands, like, don't need to go full blown, but understands how the law operates, and that you can hold them liable for anything that they do misleading. Like, for example, pulling you over is a form of imprisonment to start off with, and not actually, and especially in unmarked cop cars, that is highly illegal. Not allowed to do that either.
Well, it's actually what they call kidnapping, isn't it? It comes under the kidnapping law.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Yeah, if they take you without any probable cause, then that's actually tantamount to kidnapping. So you can go to all sorts of different avenues and that, but we're not telling anyone to do that right enough. But
But so anyway, so when I was in the interview room, the sergeant wouldn't come in, so I got all their names and numbers. And by this stage, a friend of mine who's here with me today, my partner in crime, James, he was in handcuffs in the back seat of the cop car. I had my phone on silent and I was texting texting James, come to the cryo station, come pick me up. So anyway, when he come to the station, James, did you want to tell your part of the story?
Yeah, I'll tell something my story. I was asleep at the time. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I received a message from Emilio saying, I'm locked up, can you come pick me up from the Cryo police station? At first I thought it was a joke, and I'm like, what the hell? Because I looked at the photo and he's like this, it's handcuffs at the back of the seat. And I tried ringing him and no answer. I'm like, I better go. So I started travelling towards Cryo police station. Finally got there, and I went to the front desk and I talked to the police officer. I go, there's a man currently under arrest, name was Emilio Testa. He goes, I'll go check, wait a moment. And about 5 minutes later, he came back out, and he goes, the Melbourne police have got him, and he should be released within next 15-20 minutes. I'm like, okay, no worries. But can you just go back there and tell him that I'm here to pick him up? He goes, not a problem. And I was just waiting in the lobby, and another police officer comes out, and he was from Melbourne Police as well. And as soon as he saw me, he pulls out a notepad and he goes to me, what's your name? I go, look, there's no point me giving my name, and there's no need to. I go, I'm just here to pick up Emilio, and that's it. There's no need for you to have my name. And he goes, why is that? I'm like, I'm just here to pick my mate up, that's it. I go, there's no need for me to give you my name. I go, it's not necessary. I haven't done nothing wrong, I'm just here to pick him up. And he looked at me, he goes, mate, what's wrong with you and your mate Emilio? He goes, he's not giving me his name, you're not giving me your name. What's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. He goes, right, let me give you a story, a situation, a scenario. I'm like, alright. He goes to me, what happens if you're at school and it was your birthday that day and they wanted to sing happy birthday to you on the PA system and they didn't know your name? What would happen then? And I'm like, I don't know. What would happen? He goes, they wouldn't be able to sing happy birthday to you because they don't know your name. And I looked at him, I was like, all right, that's a good scenario, but anyway, I go, can you just tell him that I'm here to pick him up? He goes, all right, no worries, mate.
Yeah, it would have been a bit buzzed out that we both, they obviously knew who I was, but I wouldn't consent to claiming ownership of that name.
That's the most important part you just said there, is consent.
Yeah.
Everything's about consent.
Yeah.
And if you relook at it as a contractual agreement between two parties, because if you look in their own law books, under contract law, there actually needs to be 3 parties involved. There has to be a witness to the agreement of the contract. Yeah. And because there isn't half the time, the contract then isn't fulfilled, it then isn't finished.
Yeah. So
it means then you're not privy to that contract and you're not actually bound to that contract because it hasn't been ratified or witnessed by anyone else. And if you've got 2 people, like you're on the road and the policeman pulls you over and decides to arrest you, but does it on his own, then he's actually breaking the law because he needs someone there to verify why he's actually arresting you. Yeah. You cannot just make that claim because then it's a battle in court, isn't it? You say, I say. Yeah. So at the end of the day, a lot of that does happen. I must admit, it does happen a lot.
One thing I should tell everyone who's listening in too. Obviously, a lot of people do get pulled over by police officers, and they have to deal with police officers or whoever, fines and all that during their lifetime. But at the end of the day, the best advice I can give you is you have to have your own responsibility. You know what I mean? You can't just start studying the law and then you realise all the loopholes and then you start going, I know the loopholes and I know the law. Right. I'm going to do whatever I want. Yeah. And start speeding and breaking the law. The law is there for a reason. So.
No, but the thing is, you're right, James. We're not telling people that you can do whatever you want and break the law.
Right. You've got to have responsibility for yourself and everyone else at the end of the day. And that's.
No, it's good you said that, James. Because that's what we're not saying. We're not saying you can go out and rob a bank and
that's right.
and do anything like that. Because if we did that, we'd be irresponsible. And we're not trying to be irresponsible. We're just trying to tell you a few little stories of what we've had and how we can sort of. We're not even giving you remedies. None of this is a remedy. This is just experiences that we've had over time, and I'm sure a lot of people have too. But we're just trying to tell you how we've conducted ourselves in them scenarios. Yeah. It's worked sometimes, it hasn't worked other times. But we're trying to collate everything that we know now. And I mean, everyone out there should try and do this. Collect everything you know and try and work it all together. Yeah. Because there's many movements out there and many groups that are trying different things. Some people have had successes, some people haven't. Mm. So what we're trying to do is bring all that together. And with your help out there, people listening, if you've got any sort of suggestions on how we can bring all this together, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Got another question?
I've read that, Rob. But another thing was that I sort of try and corner him at the start and ask him straight away, am I under arrest? And like previous to asking him that, I always make sure that I have like my phone or a recording device. So
it doesn't really matter.
So that the whole conversation is recorded. So then if were to ever come to the worst case scenario, you've got it on file. But normally I ask him, am I under arrest? And as soon as I come to the window, they're obviously going to say no. And have I committed an offence? And normally when they're just pulling over for routine check, there's no offence. The offence is that they've pulled you over is the actual offence. But so those little things. But you say it in the most positive manner you can. Try not to like be with sort of smarty pants about it, because I tend if you act and how they act as well. But if you act like you're sort of you're going to listen to them, if you act you're above them and that you know your shit and you've got a real big ego behind it, they're going to try and shaft you any which way. But like I sort of play the sort of worried or like yes officer, no officer, but at the same time standing stern with everything that I've learnt, and that's truthful. But at the same time being polite and working with them and explaining to them. That sort of thing. Did you?
Yeah, Jono, it doesn't really matter how you write your name or how they write their name, because as I said to you before, it's presumptive. But if you say you're going to say this is what I've done, I'll tell you what I've done.
I think you're talking about the capital letters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If they're presuming that's you, it doesn't matter if you preface it with anything. If you write a little statement, and I've done this, I've written a little statement. If I ever get stopped by the police, I'll just hand them the statement. Just stating that everything I'm doing is within my own personal liability and their personal liability too, without prejudice. You can actually put that in that statement.
But paperwork with capitals and that sort of thing, that's another story altogether.
Yeah, but the thing is, what I would say is, if you're creating your paperwork, you're writing it. It doesn't matter how you write your name.
Yeah.
Block capitals, that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I
can understand that.
You can then say, this is what I wrote. If someone writes you a letter with my name is Robert James Fletcher, Fletcher being my family name, but then I get letters with Fletcher James Robert. So automatically that's not me, because that is not how I write my name.
Yeah.
So you write them a letter back, and you can put in without prejudice or blah 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 to all parties.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what you're not trying to do is harm them, although they're trying to harm you. And this is why I would say, if you walk into a situation with your good intentions and being polite and all that, you're always going to win that, if you want to call it an argument, because they're trying to hurt you, and you're not trying to hurt them. So then you can prove, and then you can actually show that the harm is being done to you, and you're not actually giving the harm to them. So this is where you say, and I said to you earlier, who's been compensated and all that, liability. Because at the end of the day, if the state's been compensated, then as I said to you before, that's a what, not who. So no single person's been compensated. It's showing you that you are a slave to the state, and that's what I'm trying to show people. Is that you have to pay the state because you've done harm to them. But them is not a real person. It's a person. It's not a human being.
So I know it depends. Like looking at it from different sort, depending where you are with doing paperwork and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like I know people who've actually gone back once they've learned. Like parents who have gone back and actually. I forgot the registrar where they can do it, but they've proven that their children's birth certificates, they never asked for their names to be in full caps lock, and they've actually gotten it changed. And there's a chap.
No.
I'm just trying to think now, but they've got it changed back down to lowercase, and for certain specific reasons with whatever filings or documents or legal things that they're doing, it does make a difference.
There is a process you can go through to reclaim your birth certificate. Everyone's got a copy of their birth certificate. Yeah. It might look like the real original, but it's not.
But the lowercase can sort of represent the living being.
Absolutely, yeah. But this is another thing you can do is reclaim your birth certificate. I'm not exactly sure the process. I'm sure people can do research out there. But you can reclaim your birth certificate and actually take yourself out of the system. Because what it is, if you don't make a will and testament by the time you're 7, then that means you are actually a dead entity. You don't exist. You only exist on paper.
Yeah.
And this is why when people die and someone doesn't claim that will and testament, the state take it, because then the state presumes that they are the guardianship or the custodian of you, which they are.
Yeah.
That's the presumption they use. So if you don't then claim your birth certificate back, the state will claim it when you die.
Yeah.
Right? So this is why some people have lost all of the inheritance, because the state's taken it from them. And this is how you can prove that you are a ward of the state. Because why do you think you're born in a ward in a hospital? Because you are a ward of the state. You are born in a ward. So this is where, when you register your birth, it means you are now registering yourself to the state, because you are then born to the state.
Yeah. A lot of people sort of listening to these sort of radio channels and that sort of thing. They sort of got the good understanding about the straw man. Yeah. No. But yeah, if anyone's new to this side of things, but I'm sure most people are these days. But yeah, look up straw man, because straw man's a good place to start.
Well, this is what I did when we were in court with my friends. We married I'm sure everyone's familiar with the OP One People's now. Yeah, One People stuff, and the free man as well, and them two together, because what they essentially do is the same thing. The free man says you're free, so does the OP says you're free, right? So if you use them two together, use a free man when you're in court, along with the OP, it's a very powerful technology. Yeah. Very, very powerful. And no one can contest this. So this is what I'm saying. If you put that into a statement of yourself, like a little verbatim on a bit of paper that you can give people, stating this, I tell you what, it's very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah, I think, like I say on most of the shows, the most primary important thing for all of this, it ties with all this legal fiction stuff, is understanding that firstly that it is fiction, but not to get rid of the fear of worrying about it all, because the fear is what it ties us all to that, because we're worried that if we don't go and follow suit with this fictional entity, which is your name, like, don't get me wrong, like, everyone's going to use it with their everyday purposes or whatever, because that's the society that we're born into. But losing fear, and even just think about it, what it is that you're worried about. Like, if you're going to question the police officer, or if you're not going to admit that that's your name that they're telling you or they're asking you about, like the fear, it has to dissolve. Yeah, and as soon as you lose that fear, then and you're just looking for the truth, and you're doing your research and trying to understand exactly how it all come about, then the more truth you find out, you find that you're doing everything the real honourable way. So then you're like, well, why am I worried? Why am I fearing all this sort of built up system that's against me? It's not sort of helping me out. Like the things that are going on now around the world, and them trying to really pump martial law, and they want it in full swing by 2014 in June, I think, in America. But it's a little bit daunting that people aren't as readily enough questioning the most important things, especially like little.
That's what I was going to bring that up actually, about martial law.
Yeah.
And back to what I was saying before, why I'm learning all this about the law and all that is actually not to gain anything from it, just so I now know the law. I can go do 150 kilometres down the highway, and if I get pulled over, I can say all this and that, and use it that way. I'm actually using it because the way the world's going, like Milo said, martial law and all that, it's actually in its place. It's working now, and if people don't take their responsibility and start learning this stuff, once that kicks in, no one's going to have no idea what's going to happen and what's going to do anything about it, because
like all the rights, all the
Yeah.
when I think it was Bob Hawke was one of the ex-prime ministers when he came into power. They took out of all state public schools in Australia all the books that taught
Constitution.
the rights of the people. Yeah. All the constitutional rights that people had, and they took all those books out of all the schools as soon as this bloody I think it was Prime Minister come into power. Like
Gough,
that.
Yeah, Gough Whitlam.
Yeah, Gough Whitlam, one or the other.
Very similar. Gough Whitlam tried to make Australia a republic. That's what he tried to do, and this is why. And if we look in Australia today,
it is in a sense.
Well, it is, because you look at the Parliament. We've got the upper, lower house. We've got the House of Representatives. That is a very Republican way of doing your politics. Because you look in America, that's exactly what they've got in America, and they're a republic.
Yeah.
So Gough Whitlam had a little meeting with the Queen, and just a little history. I'm sure everyone knows this, but I had a little interview with the Queen. I had a little meeting with the Queen, and asked her pretty much in no simple terms, can we devolve ourselves from the crown and become a republic? Well, the Queen, in a weird and round sort of way, said no, but the way she said no, Gough Whitlam probably just took it on board and said, right, we're going to do it anyway. So that's essentially what's happened in the last sort of 30 years in Australia.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you can go into when you go about that. But then you start questioning, well, how much, like this sort of things that I ask myself as well, like, there's much knowledge you can gain, like all knowledge is good knowledge, whether it's bad stuff you learn from all the bad things, so it's all necessary, but how much, I find myself asking, how much is it necessary to know exactly how all the, like, it'd be great to know, and I'm still learning about it all, but wondering if learning the more important things, like just understanding exactly who you are and how it all works, so then you can sort of protect yourself in different sort of scenarios.
I just believe the most important question you have to ask yourself is who you are, who am I? If you don't understand who you are, then all of this is just going to keep coming. I'm
still trying to figure out who I am.
But that's the most important thing. You really want to understand all this, and we're still trying to understand it all as well. But one thing I've actually come to terms with is the fact that I know who I am. I actually do know who I am now, and I never used to.
You're Robert Fletcher.
Who am I? No, but I've really come to know who I am, and I've taken steps in my life now to reiterate that. And not a lot of people can actually take that away from you, because there's no contest. If you tell someone that you know who you are, they have to say you're not, and there's no way they can do that. So that's one of the most important things. I would say to everyone, I've said this in an interview before, I said, reacquaint yourself with yourself. Actually know who you are by reintroducing yourself to yourself. Because at the end of the day, we've all lost that way. We've all lost that sort of, that acquaintance that we used to have when we were kids.
On that subject, like, when I'll go out or have conversations with just random people or whatever, and they ask me a question, like, how you going, who are you, like, what's your name, this and that, what's your, what do you do for work and all that kind of thing, and first of all, I'll go to them, look, my name is not really important. I go, I'm you. I'm everyone in the world. I'm humanity. I'm humankind. You know what I mean? We're all the same. We all breathe the same air. We have lungs. We have a heart. We all feel sorrow. We all feel hurt and love and happiness, and that's what matters. And combining together, that's the main key. That's the key. And
because that's part of what they want.
That's right.
Connection of everyone.
All it comes down to, like, they want to separate everyone. They want everyone to be individual thinkers, which creates all the problems. All the problems in the world. Unity is the key. Everyone has to come back together and get rid of all this evil, because everyone's individually thinking, there's always going to be
everyone's
arguments
against each other.
But we're not. I think James is not saying you can't be an individual. But
you
what
can
I'm
be,
saying is,
but
exactly. You're saying we can be an individual in a collective uniform society.
That's right,
we have innovation, we have creation. We're very creative as a human race, but that's been taken away from us by the powers that were. I now understand to be that case. We are now beginning to take over. We can see it all over the world. Action's taken up place all over the world, and the people that are now thought they were in control are now just clawing at the very fingertips that held that in the first place. So, you know, they're just about to fall off the edge of the cliff.
What makes me laugh is like, you see all the things on TV and the news all the time, just killing and murdering and passions and just everything, just trying to put fear into you. And just a small example, you buy a new house in a new area, and you know you don't go up to the next door neighbour like a normal person would, you know, and start getting to know the person.
Normal person or normal being? I catch myself up as well, always saying person, and I'm like, nah, being. Cause instead of person, I say being, but
yeah, and instead of getting to know the person or the being, or human being, you know, get to know him and neighbours around you. What you do is you always try to build a higher fence.
Yeah.
And you know, because you can't trust this guy. He might rob you, or you know.
You walk around with a periscope, thinking, right, what's going on? Yeah.
Like that's the world we live in nowadays. You know what I mean? And it's not right. It's not right at all.
Just get rid of the barriers, and everything's fine.
But another thing that's led to that as well that I found in Australia, like, don't get me wrong, Australia is it is a great, beautiful place to live. We have to be very fortunate because the things that are going on around the world right now, and the people who are starving to death and just struggling to survive, and God knows how many wars that are raging around the planet at the moment. You got to, no matter how much turmoil you're in, whether it's fictionally or financially, you have to be very grateful for where you are and that you're able to eat food and that you're able to have warmth and that sort of things, because it could be a lot worse. Always try and remember that sort of stuff when my mindset gets a little bit negative. Always be thankful for where you are. But going back to Australia, one of the main reasons I found that there's so much diversity in cultural belief structures and religions and traditions and nationalities is one of the, and I'm not sure if Australia's a guinea pig, but the more diverse types of understandings and belief systems are out there. They go off the not the agenda, but the plan of divide and conquer.
Yeah.
So if they can have all these different cultures and religions, and people aren't going to sort of get together and they're always going to be bickering. There's all going to be clashes between belief structures and understandings and that sort of thing. So it's perfect. They can control the people a lot more easier with that simple divide and conquer strategy, where no one will sort of come to the table on the same things because there's so much difference. So it works on their behalf that the multiculturalism is actually...
Multiculturalism is done by design.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's beautiful as well, because you get to converse with all different types of nationalities, and you do learn different things. But if you can see past the negative side of things and focus on the positive, then no one would sort of be worrying so much about this racism and colour, and it's just crazy.
Just on this subject too, as we were talking about before about the law and fines and police officers and all that kind of stuff. Actually, when you go to court, the rule of law is God's law. That's what everyone goes under.
Really,
that's what we were talking about before,
exactly
Rob.
Right.
Even the judge and all that, they go by God's law. No, there's no law higher than God's law. No. That's it. You know, the Creator, and that's it. His laws. And
universal
it actually, when you go to
law, exactly what it is.
When you go to court, you can see the what is that word? Contradiction. Yeah. When the judge goes, I'll just swear on the Bible. Take a note on that.
Yeah.
Straight away you go.
Put your hand on the Bible and swear tell the truth.
But there's a section in the Bible. What is it?
It doesn't have to be. It's just a hand on
Mark
the Bible.
or Matthew.
I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot. I can find out.
Just right there, by him saying that means you're testifying to God. So only God can judge you by doing that.
Yeah.
In that case, the judge can't.
Yeah, but there's a section in the Bible. There's a section in the Bible that says you are not to swear on the Bible in an easy way of explaining it.
We were saying in the car on the way over, James and me, we were saying that men are actually now making laws for men.
Yeah.
You know, we've been other entities of us are being created by men. So by proxy, these people are trying to say that they are the creators of all things, which in fact they're not. And once you can challenge that presumption, then the rest just goes away. Believe me, it is true. And please don't think I'm telling anyone to go out there and start telling people that that's what you need to do. But you need to realise one thing, and that's the only one thing you need to realise is that if they swear allegiance to God, which they do, but I must point out in 2000 in Australia they got rid of the oath of allegiance, so they don't necessarily have to take an oath to be a judge anymore. They just take an oath to the office. But essentially, they still do act under God. And if you can then just iron that out before you even get the hearing or get your case heard or whatever, really they can't really proceed, because they are then, if you want to call it blaspheming, because that's what they're doing basically. Because if they're swearing allegiance to God and then they choose to ignore it in the court, then what other law is it? It's a man-made law. It's not privy to you. No man has authority over you, and it actually says that in the Bible. Yeah. So if you just go, it says no man will fringe upon someone else or another man. And it does actually say men, it doesn't say person in the Bible, because we're talking about men and women.
Yeah. So like the word policemen and women, but now they're
policemen and women. But they call them police officers, you see. So that's another thing.
Yeah.
If you're a policeman, then you're a peacekeeper.
Yeah.
That's what you are. But and we were talking about this as well in the car. If a police officer in Australia comes up, you're not wearing his hat, then he's actually a police officer. He's not a policeman. Because if he's a policeman, a peacekeeper, he'll be wearing a full uniform.
But that's the other thing. Like, you can quiz them and say, well, you're not actually got any authority because you haven't got your hat on. Like, when you say things like that to them, you're straight away going to tick them off.
No, you say, can I have a police officer present? A police.
Yeah, I know.
But
yeah, you can. You can do it.
No, because then what you're saying is you want protection.
Yeah.
But
they don't even understand that.
It doesn't matter. They need to just go back into their law books and find out. Because what we got in Australia is the police think they know what the law is. They think they're law enforcement.
Do you know how many times I've quizzed police officers on certain different things, as well as that thing at the council meeting?
Yeah.
They're like, I don't need to know that. They actually say these things. Yeah. They're like, I don't know. I don't need to know.
I don't need to know the law.
Like, what are you talking about? You're
Yeah. They go, I don't need to know the law. It's what I say or what goes. And even one of the officers said to one of our colleagues, Rena, I can arrest you for whatever I want. So it was like, well, is there any charge? She went, no, but I can arrest you for whatever I want. So you're making it up they make it up as you go along, right?
Yeah, but it's just that they're given this authority.
Yeah.
But they're the officers that they want, because the ones that ego firing out and it's dangerous. But you've got to be sort of understanding as well that everyone's on this sort of journey, and you're sort of respectful of their ignorance in a certain sense.
Everybody's a human being.
Yeah, everyone's a human being.
Yeah.
Even I don't like saying. It's probably a bit silly, but human is like, if you break it up, man, like the word hue is like a saturation of different contrasts, like it's not, you know what I mean? And human being is meant to be half man, half monster or something.
It is.
It's
like, I don't know, I'm not too sure the actual...
But they're just words.
Look it up.
You can look up word meanings for the rest of your life, and but then there's so many different, like, what's that chap James? What's that language with the codes and the
David Wynn Miller.
Yeah, David Wynn Miller.
Past syntax grammar.
Yeah, syntax grammar. If you have a look at David Wynn Miller.
Past syntax grammar is actually understanding the sentence you write forwards and backwards, meaning exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what it is, and that's how we should be writing our sentences.
No, it's intense, very intense.
Very
Check
intense,
it out.
but it's excellent, because what he did, he mathematically equated 8,500 different languages and mathematically perfected them.
Yeah.
So with the mathematical equations, it's like an equation. 1 + 2 equals 3, 3 - 2 equals 1. So if you look at it and form a sentence in that way, then they mean forward and backwards exactly the same thing. So, that's just simple, but it's very, very, very hard to understand. It's a lot of research. He said it would take about 8,000 hours to understand it.
Yeah, but it's good to throw out there and see what else is out there.
Because what he did, and I'll just do a very, very short explanation. What he did, he went through all the courts on all the planets. And just said, this is how you do it. This is how you should be talking in the courts, and if you don't, then he's the only federal judge on this planet that can sack federal judges.
Yeah. And
so anyway, very interesting to get into.
I'll read a comment, Jono. You can always be nice as you want to the cops, but they are trained to respond with the threat of violence in so many ways, e.g. raising their imposing on your personal and of course the threat of arrest. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's crazy, but if you can...
in that case, Jono, just accept it and get arrested, fine. Yeah, just accept it.
No, do you know what?
Go with them.
Like,
and then while you're there,
you know, I found we've got a minute left, but if you say, like, before when you ask them, if you're under arrest and they say no, and then you explain to them and you can see it's sort of going to the place where they want to take you to the station, and if you've got the time to say, listen, I'll come to the station, we'll have a chat, I'm more than happy. And when they're like, well, the whole point of me is trying to get this guy to the station, but he wants to go willingly, what's the point of taking him? What's the point of taking him?
Even before he says that, I'll go to the station, no worries.
But anyway, next week we're going to have a very intense conversation, different topic, but if anyone's got any questions or anything to send me, Living Man, one word, with a soul, second word from my Facebook, and Before We Die, B4WEDY @hotmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll talk to you soon.